There are moments when truth does not enter quietly, but shakes the environment around it. When a message brings light, it also reveals resistance. When understanding grows, opposition rises. When a new movement begins, conflict is never far behind. This is what happened when Paul and Silas arrived in Thessalonica. After leaving Philippi, where they had experienced both breakthrough and imprisonment, Paul and Silas continued their journey through the region of Macedonia. Their mission was not slowing down, it was expanding. Thessalonica was a major city. It was a strategic center of trade, culture, and political influence. As a Roman city with strong Greek roots, it was diverse, busy, and deeply connected to regional networks. This made it an important place for the gospel to enter. Because what happens in Thessalonica would not stay in Thessalonica. As was their custom, Paul entered the synagogue on the Sabbath days. This was his usual pattern, starting in Jewish communities before reaching broader audiences. For 3 Sabbaths, he reasoned with them from the scriptures. This was not casual conversation. It was structured teaching, interpretation, and explanation. He explained and proved that the Messiah had to suffer and rise from the dead. And then he made the central claim, "This Jesus I am proclaiming to you is the Messiah." This statement became the turning point. Some of the listeners were convinced. They joined Paul and Silas. Among them were Jews, God-fearing Greeks, and prominent women of the city. This detail is important because it shows that the message was crossing social and cultural boundaries. It was not limited to one group. It was expanding across different layers of society. However, not everyone responded positively. As the message grew, so did opposition. Some of the Jews became jealous. They gathered troublemakers from the marketplace and formed a mob. This is a key pattern in Acts. When truth spreads, resistance often organizes. These individuals stirred up the crowd and created chaos in the city. They went to Jason's house, where Paul and Silas were staying, hoping to bring them out to the people. But when they did not find them, they dragged Jason and some other believers before the city officials. Their accusation was serious. "These men who have turned the world upside down have come here also." This statement is powerful. Even their opponents recognize the impact of the message. They have turned the world upside down. From the perspective of the opposition, the gospel was disruptive. It challenged existing structures. It questioned established beliefs. It created movement where there was stability. But what they saw as disruption was actually transformation. The accusation continues. They are all acting against Caesar's decrees, saying that there is another king, Jesus. This was not just a religious claim. It was interpreted as political tension. Because in the Roman world, Caesar was seen as the ultimate authority. Claiming another king was considered dangerous. This is where misunderstanding intensifies opposition. The message of Jesus was not a political rebellion, but it was interpreted through political fear. The city officials and the crowd became disturbed, and when they heard these things, they were thrown into confusion. Jason and the others were required to post bond before being released. This means they had to provide financial security to ensure peace in the city. The situation was serious enough that Paul and Silas had to leave Thessalonica under pressure. But even in departure, the impact of their message remained. To understand this passage deeply, we need to see its layers. At surface level, it is a story of preaching and opposition. But at deeper level, it is a story of how truth spreads in structured environments. Paul and Silas do not enter Thessalonica as disruptors. They enter as teachers. They reason. They explain. They use scripture. Their method is not force. It is understanding. For 3 weeks, they engage with the synagogue community. This shows persistence. Transformation is not immediate. It develops over time. But as understanding grows, resistance also grows. This is a key tension in the passage, because the same message that brings belief also triggers opposition. Some accept it, others reject it, and others react strongly against it. Another important theme is jealousy. The text specifically mentions that some Jews became jealous. This jealousy is not random emotion, it is a reaction to influence shifting. As people begin to believe the message, influence within the synagogue changes. Those who previously held authority feel threatened, and that threat becomes resistance. They gather troublemakers, they form a group, and they create disturbance in the city. This shows how opposition is often organized, not accidental. It is structured response to perceived change. Another important aspect is the accusation that Paul and Silas are turning the world upside down. This phrase reveals perception. What is actually transformation is interpreted as disruption. What is actually healing is interpreted as instability. This shows that perspective shapes interpretation. From inside the movement, it is renewal. From outside resistance, it is chaos. Both are looking at the same events, but interpreting them differently. Another key detail is Jason's involvement. Jason is the one who hosts Paul and Silas. This places him at the center of controversy. He becomes responsible in the eyes of authorities for their presence, and he is required to post bond. This shows that early believers often faced consequences for hospitality. Supporting the mission was not without risk, but it was part of participation. Another layer in this passage is movement. Paul and Silas do not remain in Thessalonica after the conflict escalates. They continue their journey, but the message they preach does not leave with them. It remains in the city. The opposition may remove the messengers temporarily, but the message continues to spread. This is a key pattern in Acts. Opposition does not stop expansion. It often accelerates it. Because attention increases, discussion spreads, awareness grows. Even conflict becomes a form of communication. Another important reflection is the balance between acceptance and rejection. In Thessalonica, both happen simultaneously. Some believe, some oppose. Some are influenced by jealousy. Some are influenced by truth. This shows that response to the gospel is not uniform. It divides opinion, and that division reveals internal priorities. What people value determines how they respond. Another key theme is courage. Paul and Silas continue preaching despite knowing opposition is possible. They do not avoid synagogue teaching because of risk. They engage directly. This reflects commitment to mission over comfort. But their departure from Thessalonica also shows wisdom. They do not remain in escalating conflict when the mission requires movement. There is a balance between boldness and timing. They stay long enough to teach. They leave when necessary to continue expansion. This balance is part of missionary strategy. Another layer in this passage is influence. The message does not only affect individuals, it affects cities. The accusation itself confirms this. They have turned the world upside down. This means the message is not localized. It is spreading beyond control. And that is why it is opposed, because widespread influence challenges established systems. Another important reflection is the role of Scripture. Paul reasons from the Scriptures to explain Jesus. This shows continuity between old understanding and new revelation. He is not introducing something disconnected. He is showing fulfillment. This is important because it frames the message as continuation, not contradiction. But even with scriptural grounding, acceptance is not universal, because understanding alone is not always enough. Response also depends on openness. As the story closes, Paul and Silas leave Thessalonica, but the impact remains. Believers stay, the message spreads, and the church continues to grow in Macedonia. Even in absence of the messengers, the movement continues. This is the strength of early Christian expansion. It does not depend on one location or one moment. It continues through communities formed in each city. Thessalonica becomes one of those foundational communities, and later it becomes a significant center of early Christian writing and teaching. But it begins here, with teaching in a synagogue, with acceptance and opposition, with belief and resistance, with movement and departure, and with a message that continues beyond the moment it was spoken. Because truth, once received, does not remain confined. It spreads, sometimes quietly, sometimes through conflict, but always with impact. The story of Paul and Silas in Thessalonica is not just about opposition. It is about how truth moves through environments that are not always ready for it, and how transformation often begins in the very places where resistance is strongest. Thank you for watching. If this message helped you understand this passage more deeply, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may need encouragement, and follow the Holy Path Insights channel for more biblical reflections that bring Scripture to life in a meaningful and powerful way.